Okay, so last time on Gran Turismo 4, we started the European events sector, as we have now done our first 3 events, and now I think it's time, after going through 3 single race events, to get through our first championship event. And since I only have 3 cars to choose from here, well, I think it's almost obvious to say which one of these will probably be my best choice. And that's why I'm going to use the Renault 5 in Olympe. I hope I said that right. Anyway, now we are getting on to what is essentially the French Championship. And just before we move anywhere with this, I am going to get myself one thing, just to be certain about this, because I wonder if it might just be needed. So, I'm gonna get the turbo kit, and I'll also get the racing intercooler just in case. I probably won't need them, but it is reassuring to know that I have those behind me as backup, for just in case, because we are going to be up against some hot hatches who will probably be in the 200 horsepower bracket. And that's why I bought the turbo as well as the intercooler. So this is our first championship event of the European races, Tour France Championnat. And where if we win, we will get 35 grand and 10 grand depending on how many races we win. It will be a 5 race championship, as we're going to Opera Paris, as we're going to, well, basically Opera Paris, Salt Circuit, which is what that is in English, Special Stage Route 5, Grand Valley, and last but not least, Monaco. So we're basically doing what's mostly a European tour here, and 35 grand if we win overall. Okay, let's aller. And wherefore, our competition, we have got 3 Renaults, 1 Citroën, 1 Peugeot, and 1, I think it's pronounced Hummel, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, that's our competition. And now we will get on with this championship, but not before we take off the driver aids, because, well, I'm convinced in saying we won't need them. I did, of course, buy my turbo parts just in case, but I don't think we'll need them for this, because we do have another Renault 5 in the field anyway, so we'll wait and see what happens. Yeah, I'm convinced in saying we should be fine with this. We're only getting a little more than, 100 points. We also have a Citroën C5 in the field, which is interesting. Definitely noticing some interesting movements and therefore hesitation from the AI there for a moment, but either way, I am now already up into 5th position, and hoping that if it's possible, we can manage to get somewhere with this. And not exactly getting an easy time to start with, as I've now cleared the other Renault 5, which is in red. We're pretty much all a little bit loose at the moment, and now trying to clear the Peugeot 106. I think I have just done that. Almost got blocked there by the Renault Megane, who is trying to throw a block on me of some sort. He now gets ahead of me, but that's okay because we do have plenty of time to catch up to the leader. I think I've noticed how loose the French cars really are at this point. And I would honestly say that's probably no fluke. I really do wonder if the Hormel might have some sort of performance gain, but that's not proven to be the case, as I've managed to close up to him pretty quickly already, as I've gained less than a second since the end of that previous sector. I think I am closing in, but it's not going to be easy to catch him, as he is still 5 seconds up the road. So I'm really going to have to make sure I do not completely screw my run over. But I look to be catching him at this stage. Progress is slow, I'll admit, but I think I'm catching him, because I am managing to put in higher cornering speeds. And that's what, in essence, seems to be helping me right now. And it looks like it's working because, well, I am now as little as 3.8 seconds back, so I think it's possible to say I might be able to catch the Berlinetta before the end of this race yet. As in, there may still be hope of me catching it. And I'm slowly closing in, as the gap is now 2.5 seconds at the end of lap 2. I'm steadily closing in on the leader, and I can definitely say we've both put up quite a gap to the rest of the field at this stage, as we've pretty much put together what feels like an enormous gap. I am just 2.2 seconds behind the Berlinette. And I think there's a very real possibility that says I'll either pass him on this lap or almost certainly on the next lap. The way we seem to be currently going with this. He does seem to have the straight line speed advantage, but as ever, I am still proving to be faster in the corners, so it's probably going to come down to a last lap pass in order for me to realistically overtake him. He does still pretty much have me on strings in a straight line, but I have shown, at the very least, that I can fight back in the corners. And that's what I think is going to happen here. And he leaves the door open for me, but again, I wasn't convinced in saying he was going to leave it wide open for me, which was why I stepped on the brakes. Looks like it is going to come down to what will probably be a last lap past, or will probably be a last lap pass most likely, as long as I stay out of the wall. He's gone wide, and we make contact. We're very much jockeying each other at the moment. Neither one of us can decide when to overtake the other. He forces me out wide, but he gets into the fence. And now, that has provided me with the perfect shot to go for the lead. And now, after battling long and hard for most of this race, I have the lead for the first time. He tries to pass me from the outside, but I have shut the door on him. I think he's still right alongside me. We're definitely doing what I would consider to be close quarter racing at this point. But I think I'm just gonna hold on. This race has definitely been what I would consider being a typical hot hatch race. Or basically like a lot of the racing I've been through recently. But in the end, it came down to corner speed, and as a result, I had the superior corner speed over the Hamel Berlinetta RS Coupe. And it was the Peugeot 106 that finished in third, ahead of the other Renault 5. So 10 grand for winning race 1. And now, let's move on to race 2. As we are now at Circuit de la Sarthe. Qualifying probably isn't necessary. Plus, I do pretty much know my way around Le Mans pretty well, so I think we're going to be fine here from what I can see. I don't think speed will really be too much of a problem for most of these corners. I have been here before. I am pretty convinced in saying I can come out here again and potentially win this. Of course, I don't think there's any real need for qualifying, but either way, I am here to try and see if I can put together at least 4 wins out of 5. Which would be my ideal setting for this. And already we have got some spins. Oh! What the fuck happened there? That was literally the entire field just racking at once. Or basically just the whole front of the pack. Basically just decided, for want of a better phrase, they were just going to crash into each other. They basically just wrecked each other as they went under the Dunlop Bridge. That was honestly the perfect storm for something catastrophic that I somehow just avoided because I was behind it. And the 106 is right behind me. I think I actually started Underground 2 using a 106 if I'm not mistaken. Or if I recall correctly. I believe that was the starter car I used. And here comes the Megane. Well, I kind of knew speed was going to be a problem here. On those long Mulsanne straights. But I am still able to at least have an advantage in the corners. And as long as I can fend off the competition behind me, then I think we should be okay. I know the Renault 5 may not exactly be the best car to use, but the truth is, because I've been spending a lot of money recently, I kind of figured this was one of the best choices I had in my garage that, well, wasn't the Renault 5 Maxi Turbo, because, well, if I use that thing, then, well, I would just absolutely demolish my competition. And, as you know, I don't want that to be the case. I want to at least get 4 out of 5 wins, maybe a clean sweep if possible, and here comes the other Renault 5 who was caught up in the draft. And now, we head down into this sharp right-hander. Really got to step on the brakes here at high speed, and make sure that your brakes, of course, are up to temperature when you go through that sharp right-hander. And here comes the other Renault 5 again, as we're heading through the trees. This battle is far from over here at Le Mans. And it looks as though we are very much on our way to winning again, as we get through Indianapolis corner and now heading up to Arnage. There is definitely a battle going on there between those two Renaults and that Peugeot now, and here comes the Berlinetta, who has pretty much been playing catch up for this whole race since he spun out at the start of the lap. The other Renault 5 is trying to pass me for the lead as we head up. I think this is Maison Blanche, if I'm not mistaken. And now up to the Porsche curves and on the brakes. Pretty deep on that corner entry, but then again, chaos was going to ensue, as I would have predicted, because pretty much everyone was jockeying. And I can definitely say it was chaos that did actually put me into this race. And now, yep, they're all in the fence. Unbelievable. Top 3 in the fence. And everything else to do with that 2010 Sydney weekend in the supercars. That was freaking crazy. But amidst a chaotic race here at Le Mans, I emerge on top as the guy who made the least mistakes, and as a result, I wound up winning big. And the Renault 5 in the end fell all the way down to last as a result of his spin. And the Berlinetta, as a result of going for that second spin, finished in P4. I think that's now going to shake things up in terms of the championship, because we'll have a tie for third. So these are your results now, after 2 races. 20 points to me, 9 points to the Hormel, and 8 points to both the Megane and the 106. Okay, so I just want to see what happened up at the front of the field, just to basically understand just basically what the hell happened with the Berlinetta as he came off Dunlop. I'm going to assume he must have had a moment of understeer, and then that was either understeer or oversteer, depending on the car type. I'm just keen to see what exactly happened to him as he came off, I think it was Dunlop corner, where the spin happened. I just really want to see what happened. So he's leading. Everything appears to be normal. Oh, he just ran wide. And then it basically just counterattacked with the oversteer. Okay, that's what happened. He just ran wide. Okay. I understand now what happened. He basically just went too deep on the corner exit, and that was what basically caused the oversteer and caused him to go for a spin. I understand everything now. I can certainly say that's shaken up the points as a result of all that chaos. But what doesn't change, however, is I now have 2 wins. And maybe if it's possible, I might be able to achieve a sweep. But we'll wait and see. It's not over yet, as we are on the forward course of Special Stage Route 5 for 3 laps. We've had a good run so far, but I can assure you this championship is not over yet. Plus, I did have to work my way up to the front of the field in Paris after I was basically, at the least 8 seconds behind by the start of the first lap, and then I was basically just playing catch up from there. And then again, I was not able to pass. But either way, I can definitely say the racing so far has been pretty good. Even though it was technically the chaos of Le Mans and the amount of times the AI just ran wide through some of those corners. That basically gave me 2 wins on the trot. Even though I'm still convinced in saying I probably would have won the race anyway, even if it hadn't been for the AI's misfortunes. I'm still convinced in saying the win would have been there. So 3.5 seconds is the gap. I am strongly convinced in saying that is going to deteriorate, because I seem to be handling my Renault 5 better than the AI seem to be handling their machines at this point. I may not have the straight line speed advantage, but I do have the cornering advantage, because I am braver in the corners than the AI, and I don't think that's really a contest. And I don't think that's really a contest to see who has the higher cornering speed. Because, well, if you've been paying attention up to this point, it's pretty obvious to say who the best is at that. Because, well, the AI have been struggling, and it's because of their struggles that I have managed to achieve 2 wins on the trot, hoping if it's possible to make it a 3-peat, which I think is very possible now because I'm only 1.3 seconds behind the Berlinetta. As we now head up through this, hairpin turn, and now we have another lap to go, but I'm convinced in saying I will pass the Berlinetta either by the end of this lap or the start of the next lap, depending on how close I get. He's gone too deep. I was very much biding my time behind him because it was the only thing I really could do. He went too deep into the corner, and that was what put him in the wall. And he's now closing on me again. I don't think he's going to pass me though. And it looks as though this is probably going to be another fight to the finish. He did have the inside line entering the tunnel. I figured it was only in my best interests to give him the running room. because that's typically what sportsmanship is. Okay, that was a little bit over the line. But I'm going to assume that must have been because he got loose on the corner exit. But either way, it doesn't really matter because, well, I still come out as the leader anyway. I'm going to assume the contact must have been accidental. I have at least been in enough sim racing deals to know when certain types of contact are intentional, and also to know when other types of contact are unintentional. I'll admit the contact was hard hitting, but I think it's fine because I'm pretty sure it was just collateral damage. It was not anything serious. Plus, as I said before, the Berlinetta went too deep into the corner and that was what put him in the fence. And that was what allowed me to take over the lead. And I have now got a big gap up at the front. So I think it's obvious to say that the clean sweep at this stage is a very real possibility. And the Renault 5 makes up for his previous mistakes by finishing P3. So, yeah, double podium for the Renault 5s. Let's go. And I think it's fair to say that these races, altogether, they've actually been pretty easy. Also nice to know that the Renault 5 gets a podium, which is a good thing. So I am double the points of the Hommel Berlinetta RS Coupe, and the Peugeot 106 is still in P3 ahead of the Renault Megane. I will admit, the racing's actually been easier than I thought it was going to be. But either way, we still have 2 races to go, so let's now move on to Grand Valley for race 4. Just taking a sip of water before getting on with this, as we are doing 3 laps of Grand Valley Speedway Reverse. And the only time in this championship that we're actually doing a grid start, which is interesting to consider. But either way, I would imagine this one, if you've been watching how this championship has been going so far, I'm convinced in saying this will be pretty easy for me to get to the front in, as it's the other Renault 5 who is right up ahead of me. And as ever, I am of course looking for a way round him. So going through the first tunnel, a little bit wide there on the exit of the first tunnel, but either way, I am still in the fight. And I cannot really seem to do anything about the Renault at the moment. But that's okay, because we still have plenty of time to get to the front. And I cleared the Renault from the outside. and get a push from behind. Kind of what I was expecting. As we're now heading through the hairpin. And at this time, it looks like we should be able to get to the front relatively quickly. And the Berlinetta so far seems to be having an easier time of getting through the corners compared to what he did at Le Mans, where he basically had an absolute howler of a run because he went off the track twice. But aside from that one chaos-filled Le Mans race where I wound up being the benefactor, the rest of this has actually provided pretty good racing altogether. I feel like I've actually been challenged by the AI to a reasonable level. And I think it's fair to say that I've definitely had to work for these wins nonetheless. And they've all come down to me successfully setting up what's more or less been a last lap pass most of the time. I think I'm dropping away from the Berlinetta here, but I am going to try my best to catch back up to him. Because that is what I have to try and do. Even though he is pulling away from me slightly. But I am going for it. And don't think for a second that I am not going for this win. Because I really do want to show that I can get the clean sweep, if possible. Plus, as you can tell, I have amped up the corner aggression to make it so I at least have a fighting chance. And the reason I say reasonably competitive is, well, because, well, the AI have not been blowing me out, plus I have not been blowing out the AI either. We've more or less been on level pegging. Except for saying at this time at least, I can only just keep up with the Berlinetta in the first two sectors before we get on this long front straightaway. And now, heading through the chicane for the third and last time. If this championship has taught me anything, it's knowing that this race, like pretty much all the others, it's most likely going to come down to another last lap pass. But either way, this kind of feels like the tuning car Grand Prix in a way, where I am basically finding ways to win, but I'm having to work for these wins. As in, I'm really having to just send it, basically through these corners and do whatever it takes to make sure that I deservingly earn my wins. That's partly the reason, of course, why I'm going so hard on the revs. Because I am definitely going for this one. And I really want to show I can get it. And up the inside. And cutting across to try and block. I do get the corner execution I was looking for. And now I just have to hope I can hold on. The Berlinator is faster than me in a straight line, but I again have the advantage in the corners. So here's to hoping we can pull this off. Hopefully he's not going to get me in the last lap. Slingshot. He is closing in, but he's not going to get me in time. Whew. Good run. That was a really good run. I did not think I was going to hold off the Berlinator on that last sector. I almost thought for sure he was going to catch me out with the slingshot, but he amazingly didn't. Anyway, that was the penultimate race of the French Championship, and where we now have a tie for fourth between the Renault 5 and the Renault Megane. And all the other positions at this point, well, they're pretty much decided. So, I have pretty much scored the French Championship regardless of what happens next. I am pretty much the champion-elect, as I now have a 19-point advantage over the Hummel. Then it's the 106 in third. We've got a tie for fourth between the other Renault 5 and the Renault Megane. And at the back, well, very much proving to be the field filler at this point, is the Citroën C5. I'm debating over whether I should save the replay here or save it at Monaco. You know what? Because I'm convinced in saying Monaco is not going to be as close as this one, I'm going to save this one. Because, my god, did I have to work for that win. It was far from the easiest of wins, I know that for sure. That's honestly the hardest I've had to work for pretty much any race on my first try in the European events so far. Well, that aside from last time out at the Nürburgring, when I was basically just in an all-out... battle with both the BMW M3 and the Mercedes SL600 last time round. Anyway, Coted'Azur is our final race for the France Championnat. And 102 points again. I'm convinced in saying that since speed is much less of a factor here at Monaco, I think this is going to be a pretty easy win for me. Because I know the AI aren't typically strong around Monaco most of the time. And also because, well, the races up to this point, I would argue they've been well earned, as the Citroën C5 attempted to block me as we went up the hill, and now heading past La Massenay, and now down into the Casino Square, and down to Mirabeau. I am 6.7 seconds behind the Hummel, as we're now into the Lowe's hairpin. Ironically, a hairpin I have seen with my own eyes before, when I went to Monaco once. That is a true story, by the way. And now, heading through Portier and into the tunnel. This tunnel initially used to be just a shoot in and out, but then as time went on in the 70s, they eventually extended the tunnel and ultimately had eventually given us the Monaco layout that we more or less have today. Because originally the swimming pool section wasn't there until the course itself went under a few modifications in, I think it was 1973 when they first modified the circuit. I know that swimming pool section wasn't initially there until the 70s. And part of the reason I know that as well because I've seen the movie Grand Prix. So I know, of course, that for decades, the original Monaco layout was pretty much unchanged. I think the Hummel might be giving me a fight here, as he's already 6 seconds clear. Well, I figured it had to happen sooner or later. But usually I do very much tend to be the benefactor here at Monaco compared to the AI. But if the Hummel is realistically moving away from me, then he's definitely doing a good job of it. As much as I'm really trying to catch him. I think something might have flicked a switch. If I don't manage to catch him. But, as we're now heading through the tunnel again, it looks like at this time it's hard to tell for sure if I either will or won't be able to pull this off. But it looks like I'm slowly closing in. But as ever, I am having to work for pretty much every second I can gain. As we now head through to back and now through the swimming pool bus stop section. Pretty easy to get into the wall here. Even then, of course, if in this game the track itself is at wider lengths than it probably is in real life. But as ever, I'm definitely pushing to see if I can go for this one. So 3.4 seconds. I probably gained, 3.2 seconds on that last lap. So it's honestly hard to determine if whether or not I'm actually able to catch him. But I'm certainly going for it. I'm really having to basically push about as far as I can go to at least have an attempt at trying to catch him. So past Casino Square for the 3rd time, and now through Mirabeau once again. 2.3 seconds is now the gap as we head down into Lowe's hairpin. And I'm very close to catching the Hummel. And now through Portier. And heading up to the tunnel. The tunnel itself initially used to be just a flick in and out, although I'd imagine it obviously had lights. And it looks as though this is going to be another one of those close-fought thrillers that looks like it's going to be potentially me coming out on top if I can clear the Berlinette. And we both get into the wall there for a second, but now we head into La Rascasse. I tried to get past him with a last minute lunge. I think it just worked. I get very wide there, but I might just be able to hold him off. That was definitely crazy, but I think I've just got him again. Haha! Yes! 2 absolutely insane finishes, and yet I somehow, some way, beat the Homo Berlinat to both of them. I did not think, after seeing what the gap was, that was going to be a clean sweep. Still, as to be said, I will give the Homo credit for quite literally giving me what feels like a battle for the ages, and the Renault 5 has taken over 4th from the Renault Megane. Still, that was a lot of fun. I can definitely say for most of those races I really had to get my ass into gear to win those 5 races the way I did. I honestly did not think it was actually going to be pulled off, but somehow, some way, I find a way to do it. Another 10 grand is ours, and we are almost certainly going to move over 600 grand at this point, as we get another 35 grand for winning, and that puts me up to 628,000. So, after having some very hard-fought racing to somehow get the clean sweep, I actually did it. I can also say for sure that, in all honesty, the Berlinetta, he gave me some really hard runs, and I really had to give it basically everything right to the limit in order to get those wins the way I did. I honestly did not think this was going to be a clean sweep. I really didn't, because I've definitely struggled up to this point in terms of scoring sweeps. So a 23-point margin of victory over the Hommel Berlinetta RS Coupe. Then it's the Peugeot 106 S16, finishing P3 with 17 points. The other Renault 5 finished 4th with 16. The Renault Megane takes home 5th with 14. And at the back, with 1 5th placed run under his belt, it is the Citroën C5 V6 exclusive. So 50, 27, 17, 16, 14, and 6 are your final point scores for the French Championship. Okay, let's move on before I go on another spiel. I think out of all those finishes, Monaco definitely provided what was probably the closest. And for winning this, we get the Citroën 2CV. I honestly don't think we could have won any better prize than this. This will also be important because, well, we do technically have a race event with the Citroën 2CV, as you'll find out soon enough. From 1954. Ironically, one of the best-selling production cars of all time. So, there we go. That was the French Championship, and where the top car in the end emerged as the Renault 5 Turbo. A race to decide the number 1 French car from the land of the stylish hot hatches. Hey, guess what? A 25-year-old Renault 5 at the time of this game, or 45-year-old Renault 5 of this game, I should say. No, wait, let me start over. A 45-year-old Renault 5 became the best of the bunch. And yes, it was necessary for me to have the turbo kit with me on standby. So, in the end of that, we have now driven over 1,000 miles and scored over 210 trophies with 87 cars now in our garage. And we moved up another 0.9%. So let's now try and find our Citroen 2CV, as we've now driven 42 cars up to this point in the game. Wow. Here it is. The Citroen 2CV in Gris Bleu. And as I would have expected, this car sells for a low amount. Obviously no point in selling it. And we honestly don't need to. Because altogether, we will have some usage for this thing later on. And we'll also be having fun with this thing as well. Is what me thinks. I'm also pretty sure there's a pink model for this car. At least a car in this game with a pink colour scheme. Unless that's what we get in the following event. But anyway, yeah. Citroen 2CV from 1954 is ours. And what we'll be doing next time, I'll figure something out. Anyways, until then, stay tuned for the next one.